I am co-president of COFI POWER-PAC Illinois, along with Felipa Mena. Hola, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Felipa Mena y somos coaches de POWER-PAC Illinois junto con Rose. I'm going to go ahead and take us through a couple of little pointers today, and after which Felipa is going to translate. Unfortunately, the webinar will be in English only, but later on we do have plans to have it translated, the whole recording, into Spanish. So, and then they also have literature now in Spanish. And in the various sites, we do have people who are helping with translation. So thank you all for coming. I'd like to also thank our partners who have helped put this whole thing together and sponsor this webinar. Of course, COFI POWER-PAC naturally. Also, we're so thankful in partnership to have Act Now, Partners for Each and Every Child, and then also the organizers that have worked diligently at the various sites. In Aurora, we have Patricia Eastlas. In East St. Louis, we have Esther Beard. We have Janet Vargas here in Chicago, who's helping facilitate and organize. We've also got Ellen Schumer present here with us, the Executive Director of COFI and POWER-PAC. Finally, while the webinar is going on, we're going to ask everyone in the various sites, to be mindful of the side chatter and conversations so that it doesn't filter in everyone else hearing the webinar in the different spaces. My colleague, Felipa Mena, at this point is going to translate this far. Ok, buenos días a todos otra vez, para todos ustedes, bienvenidos aquí. Pensamos que el video o la conferencia el webinario va a ser solamente en inglés, pero en cuanto tengamos traducción en español, va a ser mandado a ustedes o a decirles a ustedes lo que es en español, ¿ok? También queremos darle gracias a los compañeros que están cooperando con nosotros, como es ACT Now, COFI POWER-PAC y y ¿qué más está abajo? COFI POWER-PAC, todos los niños juntos, me lo quito ahí aquí. The little ones. Permiso. The partners. Partners for each child and every child que han trabajado juntos para hacer este seminario posible. También nos acompañan en los videos Patricia Islas en Aurora, Esther en San Luis y aquí en Chicago es Janet Vargas. So hopefully everyone enjoys the webinar and gets some insight into learning more about your school and what you can do to change it. We have it set up different because of the other sites where parents are actually present there. And after the webinar, we will have discussion around this. In the meantime, I want to introduce a fabulous young lady who is going to come and talk a little bit more about the why and the what. And please give a round of applause to Kata Williams for Partners for Each and Every Child. Great. Thank you so much, Rose and Felipa, and good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're all here today to learn and to discuss this moment of opportunity for parents, students, and families, among others, to engage as key stakeholders with your school districts and schools on some important planning and implementation efforts happening this fall and beyond. This is really important because we have an equity equity challenge in Illinois, and as well nationally when it comes to our education system. But when I say equity challenge, I'm referring to what we see as a very pretty consistent pattern that those students in schools that have the highest level of need tend to receive the least amount of resources historically. These resources include school funding, culturally relevant curriculum, quality teachers, and access to school climate issues, including exclusionary discipline practices. We also see historically that the people most impacted by various education reforms, including various policies and planning efforts and implementation of those reforms, are not actually included at the table to inform the decision making. This is a problem. However, with every challenge, there's an opportunity to thoughtfully and consistently and transparently and collaboratively actually work to problem-solve solutions. Today, you're going to learn more about two of these opportunities under ESSA coming up this fall: the Illinois New Report Card System and Illinois' new system of school improvement. We hope that at the end of the webinar, you'll be armed with some of the basic information you need to engage on some of these important efforts. So, in an effort to not make this like a lot of other webinars where we're talking at you the whole time, we wanted to add an interactive component here. So please bear with us because we obviously have a number of different dynamics. We have both folks who have joined us online as well as the fabulous people who are at our different sites. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to ask everyone who's both in the rooms and online to quickly think about the question that I'm about to pose to you and then type it into the poll link on the slide. So here's the question. Are you ready? Yes. What makes a good school? What in your mind makes a good school? We're looking for one word or a really short phrase of what makes a good school. So what we're asking right now, before you begin, is that webinar-only attendees click the poll link that's on the slide and enter your word or short phrase. For on-site attendees, we're going to go ahead and mute all of the different sites and ask that you all popcorn your answers out to your facilitator, and the facilitator is going to put that information into the web form as well. So let's give this a couple of minutes and then regroup after that. Thank you. I'll just change it back. So can she put it up again? Sophie, can you put the cloud back up? That was a pretty great process. It'd be great to see what came out of that word cloud. I started to see. Great. All right. So if you all look at this, hopefully you can all see on your screens what makes a good school. Some of the big things that came out, which means that multiple people suggested these, is parents, culture, families, community, responsive communication, teachers, climate, programs, principals, councils, curriculum, feeling included, healthy, and supported. These are great. Thank you all so much. And now I have this esteemed pleasure of welcoming our special guest one of two from the Illinois State Board of Education, Patrick Payne. Patrick is the person who is in charge of everything Illinois report card related at the department, and we're so excited to have him as a guest here. And Patrick will talk more about report cards. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you, Kata. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, fantastic. We've got the technology working on our end then. Like Kata said, my name is Patrick Payne. I'm the Director of Data Strategies and Analytics at the Illinois State Board of Ed. My team is responsible for the Illinois report card. I'll talk about it just for a few minutes and try and share my screen at some point to navigate a little bit, and then talk about a couple things that are really important, I think, that are new to the report card this year. What was interesting about that word cloud is that what I didn't see in there was test scores. No one said test scores that are in there, and I think that's right. I think there are a lot of things that people think about, certainly myself, about what makes a good school, and test scores are not the first thing that come to mind. And so I don't want to give people the impression that the report card is just about test scores. You can find that there, but there's a lot of other information that's on there as well. So what is the Illinois report card? It's a website. It's also a PDF report that we produce about every school and district, and there's a state level version of it as well. That is a report card out on all public schools in the state of Illinois. But it's for all public schools and public districts in the state. It shares information about the climate and culture of schools that we have, course offerings. There's information that school principals put in that share information about the environments in their schools. It includes test scores. It includes demographic and enrollment information as well. So it's sort of the end of the year official record for what's happening at schools and districts throughout the state. It's released annually. Every October 31st, we release the report card. It's required by state statute and federal guidance. There are conditions that the federal government asks us to have our report cards meet in order to qualify for certain funding, like Title I. And in state statute, there are a variety of metrics and measures that the governor and the Illinois state legislatures have decided that they feel is necessary and important for us to report on. Like I mentioned, it shares more than just test scores. It's performance data, but it's also school environment data. It includes every public school and district in the state, and that's even expanding a little bit. And there are two versions. What most people think of as the report card is the Illinois Interactive Report Card. It's at the link below. If you go to IllinoisReportCard.com, you'll find the Illinois Report Card. We'll go there in 1 second. There's also a classic report card, and that's a PDF version of the report card. And that's that's the version of the report card that meets our compliance definitions. There's a ton of information there, more information than you probably want to see. It's more information than I want to see, quite frankly. But that is the report card that we use to meet all the state and federal guidance. The interactive report card is the report card that we like to share, publicly, and that is the face of the report card itself. So why don't I ask for my screen to be shared for a second? So anyone who's not familiar with the report card, let me just walk you through the basics here very quickly. So you can see can you guys all see my screen? I can't see that. Can you wave if you can see my screen? Okay, all right, perfect. So what you can see, go back here. So this is the landing page. When you go to IllinoisReportCard.com, this is what you're going to see. You can search for schools and districts by name or by county name. You can search by address or zip code. We'll use my current zip code and see what comes up. So I live in 60647. I click on search. And it's bringing up a whole variety of, this is the zip code, and there are a ton of schools, as you can see, in this zip code. So I'm going to back out of that and search for Springfield, since that's where the State Board of Ed is headquartered. And you can see that as I type in Springfield, it brings up a whole bunch of lists of schools and Springfield School District 186. So it will bring up some very basic information about Springfield School District 186. On the left side of the screen, you'll see a bunch of different drop-down menus. So you can go to academic progress, and it has these handy tiles that bring up a bunch of different information that you can click on. These are also selected. You can also select them from the drop-down menu. When you go to these different displays, these different pages, it brings up the information. It's selectable. So that was the overall. This is grade and demographics. You can select. These are PARCC scores. You can select by the English version of the test for English language arts. For math, you can get specific about the grades that you would like to look at, and it will bring that up. There's information about district environment. So there's a 5 essentials survey, average class size, total school days. There's demographic information about enrollment. There's 14,862 students in Springfield. The website right now this is 2016-2017 school year data. And that's because, like I said, we release the report card every year on October 31st. So the most recent school year, 2017-18, won't be available until October 31st this year. So on October 31st, this will change over. Right here it says 2016-17. This will change to be 2017-18. All the data on the site will be updated. There's a variety of changes that we're making to the report card this year. So these landing pages, right here we're at the state snapshot. There's 852 school districts in the state. There's 3,796 schools. When you go to the state snapshot, or when you go to a district's page, instead of there's not much information here, as you can see. But when you go to Indian Springs School District, there's also not much information here. That's going to change. We're similar to when you go to one of these subheads, and we've got these clickable tiles that will also be on the front page of the screen. So there'll be clickable tiles all throughout here that you can click on, and it'll take you to some additional information. So let me stop there about the. So this is the report card. This is the easiest place to come and find just general information about schools. And then I mentioned that there's a classic version of the report card. If you click on, so at any district or school, you're going to see ISB report card PDF. If you click on that, it will take you to the classic version of the report card. This is a PDF. It's printable. There's a variety of information here. Like I said, there's a lot of information here, more than, in some cases, more than I would like to see. But these are the two versions of the report card. There's a static PDF report for each district, for every school, and there's a state version. And then there's the interactive report card, which is at this website. And there's a ton of stuff to do with it. There are two big things that are coming to the report card this year. So I'm going to go ahead and get off my screen again, and we can go back to the presentation. There we go. So next slide. There are two major changes that are coming to the report card this year. One is summative designations. So we haven't had a true accountability system in the state of Illinois for several years. This is new this year that we're reintroducing accountability into the state. So every school in the state, every public school in the state will receive a summative designation. This chart identifies the different ratings that schools will get and a high-level explanation of how they get them. I think there's too much information to go into to describe how these ratings are assigned, but based on test scores, graduation rates, chronic absenteeism rates, a whole variety of data, that information is put into a formula, and we create an index score for every single school. Based on that index score, we identify the lowest performing schools, and then based on the threshold for those lowest performing schools, we identify schools that have subgroups that meet that lowest threshold. And those schools that, for the overall performance of the school, didn't meet the lowest performing threshold, but they do have a subgroup, say Black students or students with IEPs or EL students or former EL students. For subgroups that meet that lowest performing threshold, that school is then identified as underperforming. And of the remaining schools, the top 10% overall are considered exemplary, and all other schools that have no underperforming subgroups are considered commendable. Now that's going to have implications for our state system of supports that Allison will talk about a little bit later. But that's going to be brand new this year. It will be on the report card, and every public school in the state will have one of these designations. The other thing that's new, next slide. The other thing that's new this year is there's a brand new system to fund school districts in the state. It's one that gets the state of Illinois a lot more closer to equitable finances. Still not perfect, but a huge step in the right direction. So this was a law that was passed last August 31st. And essentially what it does is it replaces the old system of funding and starts with a formula and says, based on the size of your district, based on how many students that are enrolled there and the types of students you have, we believe that X number of students require a certain number of teachers or a certain number of administrators. And so based on the size of your school district, there is some minimum amount of funding that we believe that you should have in order to fund your school district. And we call that the adequacy target. So, you're a school district of a certain size, and we believe that you should have $1 million to fund it based on the types of students and the number of students that you have there. The actual money that you have available to you, divided by that adequacy target, is what we would call the capacity to meet expectations. And so if you only had $630,000 available, but based on the enrollment, the size of your district, types of students that you have, we believe that it is the minimum amount that you need to fund your district is $1 million. We would say that your 63%, that your capacity to meet expectations is at 63%. And so, this is a really important concept, because while we're also introducing this, system of accountability, we've heard feedback that, it's not fair to say that our school is lowest performing or underperforming. We don't have the money to provide the type of education that is necessary for our students, and that very well may be true. And so this funding formula takes that into account and says, you're right. This is how many students you have. This is the types of students that you have. This is how much money we think that you need. The minimum amount of money that we think that you need to have in order to provide an appropriate education. And we see that you don't have that, type of money. And so that provides we hope that will provide the appropriate context for some of the, for some of these accountability designations. And so that will also be in the report card this year. So I'm going to stop there. I hope I didn't go over time, but I think those are sort of the big ideas. You can go to illinoisreportcard.com, look around, a lot of different information about your schools, but also, things that are coming this year are summative designations, so accountability ratings, and then also, this very, very important information about how your district is funded and whether or not it has the appropriate amount of money to fund a minimally appropriate education for the students in your district.
Hi everyone. Okay, so we promised we were going to be talking at you while we give you a chance to engage and talk with us. I'm going to ask you a question. So just logistically, everybody's going to be on mute. Everybody in your site is going to discuss this question when you're at. Whoever's on their phone or on the computer, you can join in by signing on to really spend a whole lot of time. Want to make sure they're good, right? And what we heard today is some ways we can do that is by asking questions to our students or our children, to teachers, principals, showing up in person, going to meetings, and using, the forms of communication that they do have, report cards, flyers, checking their carpet. So there's a lot of ways. There's other ways we can check in. And now Allison Sherman from ISB is going to help us move us through what other ways we can keep an eye on what's going on in our children's schools. Thank you. Are we going to hear?
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. And I'm excited to be here and to be in front of a group that is advocating for their children. So that is absolutely what we need to have. I'm just going to frame real quick. You can go to the first slide. Second slide. There you go. Where Illinois Empower is situated. Illinois Empower is situated within the Every Student Succeeds Act, which if you aren't so familiar with that act, or ESSA as it's referred to, you're probably more familiar with NCLB, or No Child Left Behind. In December of 2015, NCLB was reauthorized to become this new law, Every Student Succeeds Act, and that is the basic law that governs all of public education across our country. And through that reauthorization, it also expanded the federal role within that process. And one of the requirements we had as a state system, as well as every other state in our nation, we needed to design a plan that would speak to the support and accountability that we would be bringing to our schools to achieve results for all of the students in the state. So Illinois Empower is the statewide system of support that is detailed within that ESSA plan. And specifically, it's how do we address and support those schools that have designations of lowest or underperforming. And those designations, again, are found in the report card to come, and a little bit of what Patrick had said. So when we look at our lowest tier schools, the bottom 5%, and schools that are just above them as underperforming, how are we going to ensure that they're making gains and improving for the students in their buildings? Unlike the previous system of support that we had under No Child Left Behind, in Illinois Empower, schools have greater choice and voice in the improvement process. So as an agency, we feel strongly that we need to work with schools and not do to or not do for schools. And I emphasize here in that statement that schools, districts, learning partners, and the agency, ISB, engage in a collaborative effort to improve their schools. And of course, a firm belief in other visuals that we have is that, and you see that at the bottom, whole school, whole child, and whole community, that as a parent group, you are also very much a community, a part of that collaboration to improve our schools. Go to the next slide. So real brief, here are some guiding principles that govern the design of our support system for our lowest performing schools. When we looked at the capacity development, we know that the support that schools need are often in the classroom under curriculum and instruction or teaching and learning. But in addition, the support that they need may be in other areas, such as governance and management, in climate and culture. So that's a big change from the support system we had in the past, where we're asking schools to look broadly at where are their greatest area of need. So an example would be a school that says, we have chronic absenteeism. And again, that information is going to be on a report card, so you would be even aware of where that school has potential challenge in that area. So when you're looking at climate and culture, if you have chronic absenteeism and teachers are not showing up for work or students are not showing up to school, then you're going to be very hard pressed to be getting the results that you need within the classroom. So we ask schools, when they engage in determining what their greatest area of needs are, that they think broadly about it, because it may come to past that there is an area to address away from the classroom in order to get the most results within the classroom. In addition, well, I'll go back to that. The first steps is that, again, a school does complete a needs assessment, and he also evaluates all of their data to think deeply about their greatest priority area. Once the priority area is determined, then they're equipped to select a learning partner. A learning partner is an organization that has research-based strategies and also has proven experience in improving schools. And again, a shift with Illinois Empower, as opposed to what we've done in the past, is that we have a variety of learning partners that are available that have been vetted by the agency and are approved and available to our schools to work alongside them to do the work of school improvement. So this is, again, different than what we had in the past, where ISB at one point would go into a school district and have a one-size-fits-all type of approach to improvement efforts. And we found that that simply didn't work. We have to empower, and again, in our title, empower schools to understand what their greatest needs are, and then have choice in who they want to bring into their system and address the needs of their local context. So those are some of the most important guiding principles and shifts in the way that we do business with our school districts. Take to the next slide. So I know the strongest focus for my talking points today are to talk about this needs assessment. Everything starts with that. The first steps for improvement for a school is to conduct this comprehensive needs assessment to determine their gaps that they have in achieving their best desired state. Go to the next slide. Illinois Empower has selected what we refer to as the Illinois Quality Framework as the needs assessment tools that our schools use. It is research-based, and it is designed by schools and administrators over the last several years for schools and administrators. So it was important to have stakeholder feedback of those that would be implementing the tool in the process of its design. Schools reflect on questions within 7 standards that you see there listed on the left of the slide. You can see by those standards area that we're looking for schools to determine their needs beyond just academics. When we say that we're focused in on the whole child, then many of our children need not only the academic support, but the social emotional piece as well. And those questions within those standards will drive at that. And in addition, you see that we are also asking schools to reflect beyond just the classroom or school experience, to also take a look at how are they engaging family and community. And again, how are they engaging you all in the efforts that they are taking at their school. Once a school has answered those questions within those standards, then they provide a rating for themselves on a spectrum from ineffective to exemplary. And they record that into an online system within the agency. Although we keep those scores for our own program evaluation at a large level, as well as to keep accountability for our schools, that data within that system is for schools to work with and to work with over time. So for instance, they put in their first set of ratings this year. We encourage them next year and the following year to revisit and conduct either another needs assessment on where they are 1 year later, or to revisit their data and see where they are on that progression. So if they started with an ineffective rating and they had done significant amount of efforts in the first year, second year, we would hope that they would see themselves move on that progression towards exemplary, because that is where we want all of our schools to be. How can you get involved? That is the key question that is that you all want answered today, in particular to my presentation. So the Illinois State Board of Ed, our agency, strongly encourages the partnership of parents and community with their local schools. We as an agency, schools, and community need to be mutually supportive of each other. And we know that this is simply effective practices that we've been promoting over years. So not just through Illinois Empower, but as a whole. But in addition, there are federal guidelines that stipulate that parents do need to be involved in some way in the school improvement efforts at their school. I will say that the idea of parents being involved, that does need to occur, but schools have a lot of discretion on what that may look like. So again, we empower them to bring in parents in the way that they see is best to meet their local needs. So a variety of ways that we've recommended or we see currently taking place is people may request that you participate on that comprehensive needs assessment with Illinois Quality Framework and the supporting rubric. So they may ask you to come to a meeting with all stakeholders from the school, teachers, principals, and they may formalize that and bring you on board for that particular meeting. In addition, another way that I've seen schools engage parents is to solicit their feedback through surveys and focus groups as well. So they may, you may not participate directly in that quality framework in those meetings, but they may solicit your feedback and then incorporate that when they're looking at this quality framework needs assessment. They also may request your participation on a school council. And in that case, you're providing input into school programs or activities that are being designed, as well as how the funding, the dollars from the state are being spent to support those programs. So again, you know, I think the most important thing is because there's local discretion with how to engage parents, that you are armed with what I see as 3 critical questions to ask of your school, your local school. And that is, you know, first one, what type of school improvement efforts are underway at our school? And second, how can I support our school in its improvement activities? How can you get involved? And then how might I share my feedback? And that could be positive feedback. It could be feedback about challenges that you're experiencing or ways that you think that the school can improve. You can take it to the next slide. As you are asking those questions, and you heard more information from Patrick today, I think it's important that you know what the context is for schools, what type of systems or policies are driving schools to make certain decisions this year with improvement efforts. So I think it's always helpful for you to become more informed, so that way you understand the language of the schools in certain meetings, or it's going to give you background information to drive even further questions than the ones that I've listed. So one way in which to do that is to subscribe to an email campaign that is currently underway with our agency. There is the website below where you can subscribe to emails that you would get minimally twice a week. And they are very user-friendly documents that are emailed out that are for all stakeholders, teachers, administrators, superintendents, as well as parents and our learning partners as well, that just detail what's going on in advance of that release of the report card that Patrick had spoken about on October 31st. So again, I can't say enough how important these documents are for schools, but also you to understand the context to ask really good questions of your school administration and staff. You'll also find the latest information about the Illinois State ESSA plan, as well as Illinois Empower. Clearly in about 10 minutes, I've only been able to give you the surface, so there's more information there off of that website. In addition, you can also read some stories that we're gathering across the state of school districts, even those that have been designated for support, some of their successes. You know, we know that when we say a designation of lowest performing or underperforming, as a whole, it's not an underperforming school. They just have some challenges that need addressing. And there are pockets of very successful practices going on, and we as an agency are also trying to promote them. So you'll see more information about how to get a handle of those stories of success and hopefully promote them with us.
Great, thank you so much, Allison. We hope that you've all found this information to be pretty informative so far. I just want to pause very briefly to kind of make sure that everyone is aware that the reference packet that we provided with this webinar has a lot of information in it with different graphics and just other information that we think will be really helpful in further understanding what both Patrick and Allison have shared with us, but we really appreciate that, and we're going to leave a few minutes at the end to ask them a few questions. So this is kind of the final part of the webinar now that we're going into, and we're really going to be focused on bringing together some of the concepts that you've heard so far to think about what it means for engagement and action and advocacy, right? So school improvement really starts with learning more and really looking closely to ensure that specific groups of students are doing well and looking closely to see if they have the same opportunity to succeed. Earlier, you heard from Patrick, who talked about the data resource that's going to be available in the form of the Illinois report card. He showed you examples of test scores, for example, that are going to be available on the report card. However, there is going to be a wealth of information. If you think back to that word cloud we did earlier in the webinar, where you called out certain things like teachers and climate being important, you're actually going to be able to see that information on these report cards, and it is going to be broken down by race, by poverty status, by disability, by language, and all of that. So you'll have a wealth of information available to you to actually use and inform that work. So let's look now at page 4 for those of you who are able. Page 4 of the reference guide. I'm going to just briefly kind of go through this because we think it's a pretty helpful way to think about how to actually get involved using and tying in both the report cards and the needs assessment process that Allison went through with us. So there are 2 columns, okay? The first one, we're talking about what are the district's and school responsibilities in this. In the second column, we talk about how parents and families can actually engage in this work. So let's quickly go through. In terms of district and school responsibilities, first thing they have to do is share their designation with the school community. Are they labeled as in need of school improvement, comprehensive school, or a targeted support school? They are responsible for sharing that, and the information is also available in the report card, as Patrick and Allison noted. Then they're going to go through this lead us through this comprehensive needs assessment process where they are responsible for identifying through that priority areas that matter to the community, that they want to actually focus on the full school community to help improve the school and close the student achievement gaps. Allison spoke about this professional learning partner idea, right? This is really an outside vendor that has been identified by the school based on what the gap is, who's going to work with the school and school community to close that gap. So they're responsible for identifying that as well. And then working with that professional learning partner to develop those strategies, to develop programs, and to develop a plan for school improvement. And finally, districts and schools are going to be responsible for continuing to evaluate what's happening and make sure to kind of update those plans accordingly. So let's go to parents and families now. First thing, find out what your designation is. I think that that's pretty clear, right? Then we want to talk about the importance of stories, and Lynn is going to talk a bit more about that because that is her expertise for sure. But we want to make sure that the stories come out through this needs assessment process, through the identification of the different priority areas, so we have a way to complement the hard data that's actually going to be in the report card. It can't just be based on that, right? We all have things to share based on our experiences that are very much valuable. All right, so we're going to write down a plan. We all know, I don't know if you remember what the phrase exactly is, but if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. And so we want to make sure that we write down a plan. There are a lot of resources to help you develop a plan, including in this reference guide, but also online as well that we'll share with you later. And then organize, volunteer, and show up, which is what all of y'all are amazing at and will do, and then give feedback to your school in an ongoing way. So I hope that all makes it clear very much that your voice is extremely essential to this process. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lynn Morton, who is going to speak a little bit more about parent school community voice. Thank you.
Good morning.
of those who are watching. I am Lynn Morton, co-chair emeritus of POWER-PAC, founding member, as well as founder and executive director of the Woman of God's Design Ministry, also an advocacy group here in Chicago. So that was a whole lot of stuff, right? Y'all sitting here zoned out. But let's bring it home now. Let's bring it home. So everything they just said, everything, all that about the data, going to your schools, knowing what you need to do, all that means is, because I'm preaching to the choir right now, right? So all that means is we got to keep doing what we've been doing. So I come to this work by way of my children and helping my boys, my nephews in the schools who were being pushed out of school because of lack of input and helping them in their social and emotional realm where they needed help at. They were struggling, and because they were struggling and had issues and no one to help them, it came out in their behavior in the classroom. But through the work of POWER-PAC and us continually working, that's how we brought restorative justice into Chicago public schools. And working with, now I'm not saying that we're not going to push back on them, but working with our educational leaders to ensure that our children are getting what they need. That is our role as parents. And ever since the beginning of, since 1965, when the Elementary and Secondary Education Act became law, it has been the role of the parent to advocate for our children. And just because we have something new, because, you know, we had NCLB, we had the Improving America School Act, we had all of those different alphabets. But the premise is still the same. Parents advocate for our kids. That's what we do. So when we're going into the school now, one of the benefits that we're going to have now is that we're going to have data. And easily accessible data. Because when POWER-PAC started, it was like pulling teeth, you know, to get some information and get some data. But now it's easily accessible for us to get the data. So going into our school meetings, it is not an option. Parent involvement is not an option. And we have to ensure that when we go into these schools and into these meetings, like we did years ago to say, Black and brown boys are being suspended at an alarming rate. Black and brown boys are being pushed out of school. Now we need to add to that, and labels. Now we need to add to that because our girls are the fastest growing population entering into the penal system. So now we have to say, we need more resources for our children to ensure that their social emotional needs are being met. So guess what you go ahead and say? We need restorative justice. We need a peace center in every school because restorative justice is social and emotional learning. And y'all know I'm getting ready to that. So we go in and as it was so eloquently laid out by the presenters from ISB, we need to have continuous improvement. These are the things we need to ask for. Continuous improvement. It's not just good that we had one good school year of excellent test scores rising. And you know test scores aren't going to rise if our kids not in school. So continuous improvement. We have to have a culture and a climate that is conducive to learning. So the culture and climate should be reflective of the students and the parents of their community. So we should have a culturally relevant curriculum. If our school is full of kids who are African American, when they open their books, they should see African American people in them. If our children are Puerto Rican and Mexican heritage, when they open their books, they should be looking at Puerto Rican and Mexican doctors. So parents as part of the leadership of the school. Governance and management and operations, parents should know all of that information, and as well as educator and employee quality. This is our job, this is our charge, is that parents, that we continue to advocate for the roles of our children in this next iteration of education law. Thank you. A part of the agenda where you can ask questions. Now we're going to do this all in a big group, so that includes this big group, Aurora, Easy Luis, folks on the phone. Because we are running a bit low on time, and we have Isby here with us, I want to start off with, you have questions for Isby, the Illinois State Board of Education. Let's start with those questions. Also, it might help you to know that if we don't answer your question, if you can write it in your index card, there is I think, has agreed to answer questions that we send them as well, or we can figure out who can answer them. So give us your questions if we don't get to them, but let's start with any questions for Isby. I'll start in this room and then do like one and then go through to the different groups. I'll do two because this is bigger. Okay, questions for the Illinois State Board of Education. Okay, Ms. Charlene, on the part where on the framework of support where the school has those 7 things they're supposed to go through, can they hear you? Yes. You said that they're supposed to go in and put in a rating. Who puts in the rating? Because I have been involved in a school where the principal themselves have put in false information going to downtown, and they don't have any idea of what actually is going on at the school. So who is putting in the rating where you all will know exactly what's going on for real, for real? Good question. That's good.
That's a very good question. So if you are in Chicago Public Schools, which I think we have a big crowd here, then the ratings are given to the district office who actually inputs them in, because there are hundreds of schools and it's just an efficient way in which to do that. If you are in a school district beyond CPS, then it really is at the local discretion. I've seen a couple things happen. Sometimes the principal logs in directly and inputs that rating. In other cases, they send it to their district office for their district office to input it. So, but to answer your question, if you want to know, you want to take a look at some of those ratings or some of the feedback, then that's a question that I would ask if you have a relationship at your local school. Ask the principal, because again, this needs assessment again is a shift from the old support system. It is conducted at the school level. In the past, it may have been something that we asked the district office to do, but going forward, we know where the rubber meets the road, right? Where the magic happens for kids is at the school. So the question that I would ask for you to build a conversation off of it, would just go to the school and ask that administrator and say, maybe not, can I, I guess the question would be, how did you go about the needs assessment? What kind of information can I take a look at some of the findings that you had at the school?
So it seems like for the central office for CPS, each school might get that assessment number in different ways.
That's correct. So
that's how I got it.
Right, and so if you are at CPS, my recommendation again, although it gets delivered up to the district office, I would suggest that you start with the school, because that's where that needs assessment was conducted, and they have that information, so that you don't have to get bogged down with locating someone at the district office. Again, start with my greatest recommendation is to start with at your local, your most local level.
Thank you.
Great question.
I got a question from Aurora. What is the role of the Illinois State Board of Education when it comes to getting the funding out to the schools?
So the State Board of Ed, so schools are funded 3 different ways, basically. There's money that comes from the federal government, there's money that comes from the state, and then there's local property tax. So the state board provides, we funnel federal money and also provide state money, and we fund districts. We don't fund schools individually. So districts are responsible for dividing up those funds. Now, for federal funds, obviously there are different demographics or different circumstances at each individual school, and so the feds will say, here's some money, it's got to go to this school, and we still give that money directly to the district, and we tell the district, like, this money needs to go to this school, this is how much is supposed to go to this other school, but there's also a lot of discretion that districts have. So the State Board of Ed, as far as its role in funding schools, we're a facilitator for a lot of for federal funds, and then also provide state funds, but we give the money directly to districts. We don't give it to schools. That's the district's role.
And I would also add to that and say that the state of Illinois, in the funding formula we have, because every state has the option to design their own formula for funding. The majority of funds that go into school districts and then down to schools do come from local property taxes as a great percentage of the money, the total money coming in.
Thank you. So we are at time. If folks want to stick around for another couple more minutes to ask one more question or two, feel free. And if you can't, we understand for those people on the phone and different sites. So we haven't heard from East St. Louis. Do you all have any questions? No? Okay. When it comes to you, send the questions over. Okay, and one more question from this group. I saw Miss Harris had her hand up really the whole time.
My question is to the state board. I understand that you want parents more involved in the process, but I also understand the schools too. The schools used to be where parents would come in and ask questions about what's going on in the school, and they would get answered. Now the schools want to know what you want the information for. They won't even let parents even in some of the schools to even see what's going on with their students or their children. So I can understand the state board saying one thing, but they got to address this with the schools to make sure the schools understand the needs of the parents and the students.
Okay, so maybe what I'm hearing is maybe the question is, where can I find support as a parent if I'm having trouble getting these answers and information from the schools? Is that a valid question?
And also with the school improvement plan, they have talking about a school improvement plan. The parents were part of that plan for years until all of a sudden they just cut it out and parents didn't have no say-so in the matter at all. So what's the new improvement plan? Will it have parents part of it, where parents have to be involved in it?
So we'll let SB answer that, but great question, Ms. Harris.
Okay. Very good question and comments in regards to that. My suggestion to start out to find out how parents are getting engaged, if they are at a particular school system or school, is to again take first steps in the local channels of communication. Again, starting with if you have a relationship with a school, you have a child in a school, then contact your child's teacher, the administrator of that school. Share your comments or suggestions for improvement. If you are struggling to get answers at that stage, then of course there is a local school district office that governs their schools. So you may find that you have to take that channel, the communication beyond that channel at the school. In addition, we do have, as a State Board of Education, we have accountability systems in place as well on how we ensure that schools are taking steps with parents. There's a variety of different ways in which to do that. So for instance, if you're getting Title I funds, which are federal funds, to support schools with higher needs, then the expectation, the federal guidelines dictate, and we as a state ensure that those take place, that parents are involved. So when a school turns in a grant to accept those funds, they have to indicate when they've met with parents to share information and how, and so on. And we have a variety of different federal funding streams that come into place. But as I mentioned, within that is accountability, that parents are involved in some of those processes. Sometimes it can look different at a particular school, but we do have, as an agency, steps in place to ensure that parents have avenues for participation in their child's learning. And we do then, as well, every several years, we audit against that. So if we, let's say, a grant indicates that parents are involved, when our consultants go in during an auditing year for a school, they will ask more details about that. Can you show us the agendas? Can you show us the time-in or the sign-in sheets that indicate that parents were involved in that process? So that is going on behind the scenes, if you will. But again, to take a step tomorrow with this, I would suggest starting at the channels of communication within your particular district.
Thank you. All right, so we are taking more questions. Please, to any of the facilitators, hand in more questions, and we'll make sure that the answers come back to you. And now I'm going to introduce Rose to wrap us up. Thank you, Rose. So this is the end of the webinar, but not the end of our conversation. We're going to continue on, but we just want to, before we leave, say thank you to all of our partners again, and also the partners that work with us to develop the Engage for Educational Equity Toolkit, where Dignity in Schools and NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. We're so grateful to Kata for coming, to ISB, to all of you. We're going to end the webinar now, but we will continue offline to take questions because the work is really with us. We got a little insight, but we have to strategize about how we're going to take this new law and make it work for our children. Thank you, everyone, so much.